Okay, welcome to the Sky Cricket Podcast, the day after the end of the 100, the finals yesterday at Lord's. Nash, you were there. I wasn't. How was it?
It was good. It was a great event, actually. Lords was pretty much a sellout. They were queuing to get in really early. Again, not two particularly close games, but it was a really good event, a real good feel to it. As ever, there were so many families. I went for a bit of lunch in St John's Wood around about midday, and there were loads of families sort of milling around, getting coffees and getting hugely excited about the cricket ahead. Unfortunately, like I say, not two particularly close games. And the Invincibles winning three on the bounce. They look by far the best side in the competition for a long time now. And the Superchargers, I mean, you did them the day before and you did the innings of the 100, probably not only this year, but maybe in the whole tournament ever. And that was Davina Perrin. They looked a very, very strong side. The Brave had won every game in a row, but the Superchargers just looked, they were like they were peaking at the right time. Fair to say, I got the easier gig. I was finished around about 9 o'clock. I put my telly on at 10:15 the day before, and you were hanging in there for some action late in that evening, trying to get that game done. It looked like a long day, the eliminator.
Yeah, it was a farcical end, actually. My daughter was doing some waitressing at the 100 final, so I picked her up about 8:30, and people were streaming out of Lord's. That was about half an hour before the end, so it was obviously because it wasn't a close finish, whereas at the Oval the night before, we were still there. Mind you, they'd been streaming out then as well because of the rain, but we were still there at, I think, 10:15. Um, they they asked the local council, I think, to try and extend the amount of time at which the lights could be put on. Um, and so, yeah, they tried their best to get it in. It was just one of those, what can you do? It rains. And I mean, it was hammering it down, and it was 10:15, and we just couldn't get the game complete. But the umpires, the ground staff, everybody tried their best. And it was a shame. I fancied the Northern Superchargers to do a bit of a double actually on the Saturday. I fancied the men to beat the Rockets had we had a proper game. Just as the women won earlier in the day, and that was a magical innings from Davina Perrin. It was really, as you say, I think the best thing that came out of the whole competition. Her innings was memorable, magical, brilliant interviews that
And
she did
I used the
afterwards.
word yesterday, significant as well, with everything that's trying to be achieved in the women's game and everything that Ebony and the Ace program, and obviously that famous old ground. We were brought up with British West Indian fans strolling in there and running on the pitch at the end for everything that they're trying to achieve in the women's game and with the Ace program, and seeing Davina Perrin play like that, a hugely significant moment as well. There must be young girls now from that community that must think, right, if she can do it, I can do it, surely.
Absolutely, and totally unaffected. Interviews that she gave afterwards, one to Butch, one to Kumar, with her family all looking down. They're in the ace box, I think, on the top of above the dressing rooms, and it looked they looked to be having a right old time of it. Um, and yeah, just a fabulous. It was a great innings. I mean, it really was a fantastic innings, and I wasn't that surprised. I remember when she first played for the Phoenix, and she was only getting like 10, 15 or something, or 20, not big innings, but there was something about the way that she played. You could sense that there was a real talent waiting to emerge. And I guess the key for her now is to try and do it more consistently. You're not going to be able to play like that every game, I suppose. But, if you look at what she's done in the 100 so far, she got that 70 earlier in the in the group stages, and then the 100 in the knockout, and then, not a lot around that. So if she can bring a greater consistency to her game, but what a talent.
And I guess that having good people around you and handling it now, because she now becomes a name. Everyone's talking about her. She'll be on the radar for not only England, but also franchises around the world. What would you recommend to anyone? I mean, she's only 18. Are we a bit conservative in England? Remember Keysy last week, or whenever we had Rob Key on, saying that we're far too conservative. In the men's game, they'd probably play her, wouldn't they? Key would say, right, we're going to play you. But just the handling of someone like that, you sort of need good people around you, because a lot of things are going to be thrown in her direction. She looks like she's very grounded and very mature for an 18-year-old. But what sort of advice would you give someone like that who's suddenly in the limelight of fame?
It's a good question. I mean, I actually don't think we're that conservative in English cricket. I disagreed with Rob, actually, not publicly, but I would disagree with that. Because I think if you look down the years, we've thrown players in very young. I mean, maybe not at 16 and 17, like occasionally on the subcontinent, but many of our best players have been thrown in young. So I don't think actually we're that conservative. I think it's a kind of cliche that's attached to English cricket, and it doesn't bear analysis with the facts. In terms of how advice, I think you're right. Good people, both family and then in a professional way. Coaches and agents and not all those kind of things, and stay grounded. She looked very grounded to me, and obviously you want to enjoy the success. What's the point of having success if you're not going to enjoy it? But stay grounded and just remember that it all flows, I suppose, from the cricket. That's the thing to take care of the most, and everything else will flow from that, and everything else will take care of itself. But enjoy the game. Look at examples of people. I always think Joe Root's the great example of somebody who's achieved almost everything in the game, but still retains a love of the game and a love of batting, and that enables him to keep practicing hard and keep playing and keep wanting to do it. So I think retain that kind of, childlike enthusiasm
And it's
for it. Anyway,
it's a general point with the women's game. What I got out of the 100, and I know we'll go back onto the men's game pretty soon, but what I got out from the 100 in the men's game, there were a lot of local, domestic, England qualified players that were doing really well. If you look at all the rankings and averages, there's obviously overseas, but there was a lot of young domestic, or not young, established domestic players. In the women's game, it was, you know, the overseas, in particular Australian overseas, dominated the tournament, as we saw yesterday in the final and throughout the tournament. And not so much the domestic players, apart from, I thought, the younger players. I thought it was a real good tournament for the really young Davina Perrin, Jodie Grucock, Tilly Courtine Coleman. There was a girl that came in last few games, Phoebe Brett at the Birmingham Phoenix, another left arm spinner. And it's how the selectors and the management of the England women's team, I noticed in the World Cup squad, they went and stuck with the tried and trusted senior players, and how they go about introducing younger players. I find interesting with what they do, actually, because I do think there is some
I mean that
real
is
youth coming through.
that's a challenge for anybody, isn't it? When to move on from the great players, or an established team. We saw that in the men's limited overs white ball teams. That under Owen Morgan 2019, then the World T20 win, and they started to move people on. Some people were saying this, they moved them on too quickly. Others are saying they were too slow to move them on. I mean, it is not an exact science, and it's not easy, because replacing, really established, experienced players, which you have to do at some point, is not straightforward. But you're right about, I mean, I noted the top 10 MVP players. We just saw a tweet, and it was Cox in the men's game. Cox, Livingston, Curran, Jacks, Willie, Crawley, Root, Banton, Ryan Ahmed. So, that they're all English players, shows that there's a lot of talent around, more depth of talent, obviously, in the men's game because it's just more established. But shows maybe how poorly England have done in the last few ICC events, given the level of talent. We should touch on the Oval Invincibles 3-timer, which a three-peat from you as well, winning the fantasy league
Thank you for
again.
mentioning that. I noticed you all
Curtis
did that video at the start of the tournament, not Nasser, not Nasser, Kumar
Well,
and Kay and
you
you.
just use AI to help you. We know there's a cheat
Absolutely not.
there.
Just sit there on the app having a look at all the permutations. Top Dagnall was texting me. Root and Banton were batting yesterday. Dagnall had Root, I had Banton. Luckily, Root didn't get many yesterday for my fantasy side. So top again, Af. It's
What
not
do what
easy. Myself and the Invincibles, 3 on the bounce between us. So why are they so good?
Yeah, I
Why are
mean,
the Invincibles so good?
the interesting thing about franchise cricket, because of the draft system and auction system, is that it's supposed to promote competitive balance. That's the whole kind of point of it. You're not There's a quite an interesting interview with Mo Bobat in this month's Cricketer magazine, where he's asked about whether the franchise should, kind of strengthen their pathways and develop players. And he says, well, what's the point? Because somebody will just come in and buy that player. What's the point in spending loads of money developing a 13-year-old, up to the 18, and then somebody just comes in and buys them at the auction. So there's no kind of value in that, if you like. I mean, so the whole point of franchise cricket and the drafts and the auctions is to promote competitive balance, and yet the Oval have won it 3 times. So what are they doing well?
Well, first of all, I think right from the start, they kept and started that affiliation between the Oval Cricket Ground and their team, and they picked a lot of very good Surrey players that was the core of their team and remained the core of their team. And if they weren't Surrey players, they were players from Kent, even though there's a bit of rivalry there. And there'll be a few Kent fans that say, I will never go and watch a game at the Oval and support the Oval Invincibles. But, the likes of Sam Billings as captain to under Moyeye. They know each other very well. Jordan Cox, when he was Kent, they get on very well. So you have that affiliation, you have that team spirit, bonding, you have consistency, which may come from success, or does success come from consistency? I do think it is obviously related, but there you turn up, you see the same names, the same players. They never keep still, so that when Adam Zampa is no longer available or they don't want him, they go and pick Rashid Khan, which is a serious, not improvement, but a serious sign that they're not going to keep still. Because if you do keep still, others will go past you. So they're constantly trying to improve, but keep that core captain, core coach, core players. I think they have a lot of all rounders. I think that helps. If you look through their sides, right from Will Jacks, who obviously bowls, but then you have the Curran brothers that can come in and do any role. So if they do lose early wickets, their batting depth. I mean, Sam Billings hardly batted in the tournament. Donovan Ferreira, a great finisher. But if they go down a bowler or bowler's not performing, they have so many options that they can make up for that. So I do think they do things. I think the other thing, and it can't be coincidence, that the two better franchises this year and in general, the Oval Invincibles play on a good pitch and the Northern Superchargers play on a good pitch, so that their batters constantly feel in good nick. So even if you're going to a slightly slower pitch or lower pitch, like Lords can be, it was a good surface yesterday, by the way, but they're in good form. Northern Superchargers playing at Headingley, you saw yesterday, Litchfield, Sutherland, Davina Perrin, everyone looks in good nick. I think it's a balance, like the Trent Rockets play on a slow, low pitch. That's a balance that you want to win all your home games, but you do want to keep your batters in form for the rest of the tournament. So I just think they do things very well at the Oval. I know you got a bad game with the weather, but when I turn up to the Oval, it is the best experience in the 100 by far. Best crowd, best pitch, best atmosphere, best team. They just do things very well there. But you can't stand
Should
still.
should L- should Lords have the final?
If it was like yesterday, if the pitch was like yesterday, I think so. I think they did a pretty good show yesterday. I think in general, I think the Invincibles and the Oval is a better ground for an event.
What
And I
Why are you
think that's what
biased against the North?
what?
There's never ever been a domestic one-day final North of Nottingham.
That's a
Why are you
it's a
biased against the
no, I'm
North? Why
not
not have
biased.
it at
I'm
Leeds?
not biased at all. I was just comparing to where it is at the moment and the other ground that we've been talking about. You make a very valid point. I thought DK made a really good words I very rarely say, actually. I thought DK made a really good point right at the end yesterday when we were going off air. And I was talking about the lack of tribalism yet that the ECB wanted with this format. And DK said, "Well, why don't they just have the final at the ground that is top?" But like yesterday, the one problem, and they were a good crowd and they enjoyed it, but there were not many Trent Rockets or Oval Invincible fans in because that's not their ground. So it was just a neutral venue with neutral fans enjoying an event. It wasn't like a derby game or a big where everyone cared about the results. So why, if you top the group, you get the home game. You get the final at home. So the Invincibles should have got.
How long would you have then to prep the final? I mean, when is it when is it decided who's top? How many days were there in between being
Yeah,
top and the
that was what he
final?
said. There'll be a problem with ticketing, and obviously also with the double header, you will have a women's side that win,
Yeah, yeah,
and they could be somewhere else.
yeah,
So there were issues with
yeah.
that. But what was noticeable yesterday was that it's a neutral ground, neutral venue, and I think it's noticeable about the 100 in general. Arthur, I don't know. I wanted to ask you about this. When you turn up and you watch, the in-ground experience is excellent. It feels like an event. People are enjoying themselves. There are loads of families there really having a good time. But is that more important than having something that people really care about? What we've brought up on sport is that you're there to support your team, or can the 100 just be something that people go and enjoy? It's like a theatre experience. There's no end result, or you don't really care about who wins or loses. It's just an experience. I feel that's what the 100's become, a good experience in the ground. Do you agree or not?
I know exactly what you're saying. Funnily enough, a friend of mine went to a game, at one of the games. I think it was at to Lords or the Oval. I can't remember, but he put that question to me on a message. He said, I'm here, and it feels like a good event, and people are here to enjoy themselves, but they're not necessarily there for the cricket, as it were, or caring about who necessarily wins. I mean, it's a balance to be had. I do feel, I mean, we'll come on to this in a minute because it'll determine a little bit how the shape of the tournament goes in future. But I do believe in the end, the sport has to kind of speak for itself and has to stand for itself. Um, because for longevity's sake, that's where it all comes from, I think. And, that obviously this year was a strange year, wasn't it? Because it's a kind of holding pattern this year. The new owners are coming in next year. There's lots of mooted changes. There's going to be changes to some names. So the Oval, who have, built this brand, the Oval Invincibles, and have won for 3 years, it sounds like they're going to be called MI London. Now they're going under the Ambani umbrella, or the Mumbai Indians umbrella. Manchester are going to become the Manchester, what are they, Super Giants, and Leeds something or other, whatever they will be, Leeds Sunrisers, maybe Sunrisers Leeds. So those are mooted changes. It sounds like there might be an auction instead of a draft. So the Oval team, for example, might suddenly be very different next year. If you can't retain all those players and there's an auction, and you'll turn up for the first Oval game and suddenly it's a wholly different team. Now, in that comes the chance to get that competitive balance and get other teams stronger, but you lose that identity and affinity. And then the other big question is around, whether it's going to remain 100 or whether it's going to change to T20. I was like, just throughout the tournament, actually, just randomly asking players and people involved, and a very split opinion, really. Some love the format and would be disappointed if it changed, and others feel it should change. Um, I mean, I wrote down a list of pros and cons, but first of all, what do you think will happen? That it seems more definite they'll go to an auction, and probably it seems likely it'll stay the same format for now.
Well, I personally don't like an auction system. I don't like too much chopping and changing because it's a month tournament. It's not like the IPL or the NFL in America or even the Premier League. Every sport has changing. Every sport has. I mean, we're still going on. We're doing it on a Monday, and Isak's just about to sign from Newcastle to Liverpool. IPL every year. There's auctions and there's players moving around. The difference is those other major tournaments last longer. So a Premier League is what, 6, 7 months. The IPL goes on for a very long time. NFL. So yeah, there's a lot of changing, and you look at your team and you go, oh, okay, they've made a lot of changes. But 3 weeks into it, you know your team, you know where everyone's playing, and you have some kind of affiliation with that team, and you rock up and you see what's in front of you. With this tournament, you get to three, and I did. By the time we got to week 3, you knew who was playing for everyone, and you knew, all right, this is their strengths, this is their weaknesses, this is where they've gone wrong, this is where they've done really well, and then the tournament ends. So next year, you'll suddenly the Invincibles have got this great franchise going. Next year, they'll have a new name. They could have some new players. By the time we get into it, the tournament's almost ending. So I don't like too much change in the 100. I think by the end of the 100, I'm loving it. At the beginning of the 100, I'm trying to work out who plays for who. And if I'm confused, then people at home just must put on their telly and go, oh, it's the blue team against the green team, or the green team against the yellow team. And it looks like good fun, but I thought he was playing or she was playing for someone else last year. So I don't like too much chopping and changing. And now changing of names. When we get used to a name, suddenly it's going to be a different name. So it's going to be chaotic for a while again. I don't think this tournament needs chaos.
It sounds like the auction is going to be a thing. That the reports seem more certain that it's going to change from a draft to an auction. So you'll that's going to happen. I mean, in terms of the format, the pros of staying with the 100 balls are the investment in the brand, which has been there for 5 or 6 years now, whatever. It's distinctive and different to all the other franchise tournaments. Obviously, 100 balls means that it's shorter than T20, which has its advantages. And as you said, you're familiar with the format now. Against that is I suppose that, T20 is the globally recognized short form cricket and will remain so. That's going to be the dominant form. And there is going to be a Champions League at some stage. That's going to come back, definitely. And therefore, do you want your Premier short form competition to just link in with that naturally? And also just the kind of international formats being 50 over and T20 in ICC events, which is what Rob Key will be kind of measured against. And if his players are not playing 50 over cricket and they're not playing domestic T20 cricket, and England do badly, there'll be some criticism down the line. Those kind of, pros and cons that I was thinking of. But I don't know, because they haven't made these decisions yet. In fact, I think the first meeting of the new board is today. They'll obviously, ponder these things over the next couple of months or so. But I sense it's going to stay 100 balls for the near term. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm not overly bothered. I do think there's too many formats, by the way. I mean, I wouldn't be overly
Yeah.
bothered if the issue is the women's game. If it becomes T20,
Well, you don't want to decouple. That's a
no,
certainty.
you
You want to
certainly don't.
keep
It's
the,
been
the, the
it's
great
been the great
strength
thing
of
of the
it is,
tournament.
the
Yeah,
great strength is having
yeah.
both games on the same day.
And then it becomes like what Indian audience, what time, the time difference, the Indian audience, late at night, which game do they want first? And the one thing we've seen in the last couple of weeks, Seth, is that the owners hold the power. They may only have 49% of the Oval Invincibles franchise share, but they decide what the name of the new franchise is going to be, possibly. So in the end, it looks like it doesn't really matter what me or you think, or what, even more importantly, what the ECB thinks. It looks like the people that have paid the cash are going to make the
Well,
decisions. And is that that is the
absolutely, and
worry
they
for,
hold
you could argue that's the
they
worry
hold a
for English cricket, is that it's taken out of the hands of the ECB, and the people who paid the cash are going to make the decisions.
Yeah, they hold the kind of power on the new board. They've got 2 seats each each of the franchises. I think it's a discussion in Australia that's happening right now as they're contemplating what we've done here, which is selling, the BBL or parts of the BBL onto private enterprise. And then this debate over, you lose your power and authority over a key month of the summer as you sell it. Anyway,
Sorry, can I just ask you one more question there?
yes.
That we get to the crux of it in the end, I think, in that I was thinking the other day when, someone from, was it the Australian CEO or chairman or whatever, was talking about maybe it's best for Test cricket to move away from everyone playing everyone, and it's not monetarily, as far as finances go, it doesn't make sense. And we're talking about the 100 and how the finances and whoever's paying the finances make the decision. And it goes back to my point about yesterday in the 100. Sport is more than just money. I know sport has to have money, and we're very lucky in England that we do have broadcast rights and Indian owners that want to be part of it or whatever. But sport is an emotion, isn't it? Surely, and that's what I mean about the 100. That there's got to be an emotional attachment to the cricket. It is an emotion sport, and I think if you just concentrate on the money and the finances, you're taking away from what sort of the intrinsic feeling about sport is. And that, like yesterday, Broady was in the pod with his phone on, following the Nottingham Forest game. My heart sank when 83 minutes in, Liverpool bang a free kick in from 30 yards away. That's the emotion of sport. And I think you've got to be very careful on how you balance the money and the finances with people that just desperately care about a team and about a country and about Test cricket. I think that you have to
Yeah,
get that balance right.
and that's the leap to be made, because in the end, that this tournament was set up. The whole point of it was set up to bring money in. The entities were created because no investors are going to invest in member-owned counties, and that was the whole point of it, really. And it's done that job in a sense, that 500 million or so has been raised and will be distributed through the county game. But I mean, it's just part of the rapidly changing landscape and the disruption that cricket has gone through in the last 20 years and is continuing to go to. So, just moving on from that, as the 100 was coming to its conclusion, there was plenty of county cricket on the One Day Cup. I was actually glued. There's a Tuesday afternoon when the quarterfinals or the group stages was coming to an end, and it was absolutely brilliant watching because Middlesex and Warwickshire were fighting it out to go through, and it looked for all money like Middlesex were gone, and Warwickshire suddenly collapsed at Edgbaston to Archie Lenham's leg spin, and Middlesex, dead and buried, 17-year-old Seb Morgan helped get them over the line with a 21-year-old Nathan Fernandez. So there's some good young players doing good things. But then that game finished Tuesday, and you talk about too many formats and the problem with the scheduling. So the game finished Tuesday, and the quarterfinals then were on a Thursday, so no chance to promote that cricket. And Somerset, who finished their home game on a Tuesday, qualified for a home quarterfinal on the Thursday. They can't. You're trying to turn around a game in 24 hours. Hampshire couldn't play at home because the Southern Brave were at the Utility Bowl. Middlesex couldn't play at Lords because that was being prepared for the 100 final. So they had to suddenly rush an organised game at a club ground, Radlett. And so their quarterfinal was played, on an average pitch in front of an average crowd. And that, if you're going to have a tournament, you have to care about that tournament as well. And that scheduling was unsatisfactory. And we've got the final now because Worcestershire beat Somerset yesterday and Hampshire beat
I
Yorkshire.
saw Liam Dawson get a big score,
We've got
140.
140,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what about young players? He's an established player. Any young players caught your eye in the Metro Bank?
Well, that's what that tournament is about now. I mean, it's a kind of hybrid first 11, second 11 comp, a development comp, really. Because some counties lose an inordinate amount of players. I don't know how many Surrey lose. They lose probably 15 or something. And some counties lose fewer than that, and have a stronger side. But yeah, some good young players around. The Roux brothers, I mean, James obviously pretty established, but Thomas, his younger brother, looks a real star in the making. So Archie Vaughan got his maiden professional 100 in one of those games as well. And in the game I was watching up at Old Trafford, they had two 16-year-olds playing. Joe Moores, who has played 3 or 4 games in the group stages, and he got a quick fire 30 odd at the end to get Lancs up to about 290. But I think he just finished his GCSEs. He's at school in Macclesfield, and we can all think what we were or weren't doing at 16, but I don't think I was smacking,
You weren't
professional attack
smacking
around for
anyone
a
at
quick
any
five.
stage in your career.
Anybody around.
You don't have to
So,
give some kind of age thing there. Just I wasn't smacking anyone.
um, but yeah, I mean, obviously there are disadvantages to what's happened with the Metro Bank One Day Cup. The fact that 50 over cricket has been downgraded now. It is a development comp, but the upside of it is that there are lots of young players getting opportunities, some quite interesting outgrounds where the games are being played, and some good crowds at the outgrounds as well. I noticed when Yorkshire played at York, I think against Lancashire, that was a good crowd. Somerset had great crowds at Taunton. So certainly not all doom and gloom there. So it's Worcestershire against Hampshire for the final, and the Blast quarterfinals are coming. Surrey, Northants, Durham, Hampshire, Lancs, Kent, Somerset, Warwickshire, and set up for some good sides that may go through there. I mean, if you were just plucking them, you'd say Surrey, Hampshire, Lancs, Somerset could be
You've
the
just upset
semi-finals.
4 counties there straight away in one sentence.
Are you doing Blast Finals Day?
No,
I'm
I've
doing
got a
it. I'm not
week
sure
off,
you are.
and my next action is the T20s against South Africa because I'm a bit of a T20 international specialist. You're doing more the 50 over stuff starting tomorrow, I'm guessing, at Leeds. Are you up
Yeah,
for that?
up to Leeds tomorrow. South Africa are in town. I'm assuming Sean Pollock is in town,
He
is
is.
he?
Sean Pollock is in
Although
town. Yeah. I think
I don't know why we didn't get him on this podcast. He should be
because
on it.
Broad said to
Um,
me yesterday, he said, "What you're doing between games? Me and Polly are going off to play some fancy course between Manchester and Trent Bridge or whatever. So they're
ah,
just sorting out their
okay.
golfing itinerary rather than the cricket."
So I was looking at. I mean, the last time England played 50 over cricket, their team was Smith, Duckett, Root, Brook, Butler, Bethel, Jacks, Kars, Rashid, Potts, and Mahmood. So it seems to me like the batting's going to be very similar, but there might just be a bit of a change there. Archer's obviously going to come in. Not sure Potts is in the squad. Baker might get a game, of course. So there might be a bit of tinkering with the bowling, but that batting looks pretty strong and settled, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously, Rob Key wants to give Harry Brook. He's still starting off in his captaincy career as an England white ball captain, so he wants to give him the best available squad, even right at the end of a very long, hard summer and another tournament. They've just finished the 100, but it does look very strong. You always got to think back, not just recently, but before that. What were they doing not so well? All those players you named and all the talent, English white ball talent that they have, why have they struggled in world events and Champions Trophy? And I think in the batting, they couldn't quite, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, they couldn't quite get the balance between T20 and 50 over cricket. They were still playing a 50 over game as an extension of a T20 game. So people were going in, teeing off, getting 20s and 30s, getting out, and then realizing, hold on, this is quite a long game. And some people say, well, it's because they don't play enough 50 over cricket
Yeah.
to get the tempo of their batting right. You could argue Owen Morgan's side played 50 over cricket like that, but they had a lot of depth to their batting and a lot of experience. And some of the all-time great batters in the likes of Roy and Bairstow at the top, followed by Butler, Morgan himself, etc., and a lot of depth down the order. So I think that's the key I'm looking for, the tempo. You never want them to go into their shell. They've won tournaments because, they went hard. But I do think they just need to get the tempo of their batting in 50 over cricket right. And a bit more of a, their bowling looked a bit one-dimensional in the Champions Trophy, all right arm fast, and then heavily reliant on Adil Rashid. So they've carried Rayan Ahmed around a lot with them. I think it's about time they'd said to Rayan, even if it means occasionally leaving Adil out on a ground that you don't need two spinners. I do think it's a time Rayan Ahmed, as we've just seen in the 100, and he's played in county cricket so well. Do you agree that he needs to now be playing? Otherwise, what's the point of having a bib on all the time?
Um, yes and no. I believe in picking your best team, actually. And obviously, I think Adil Rashid is a better white ball spinner still than Rayan Ahmed. I mean, there might be occasions where you play two spinners, obviously, but I believe in just in picking your best team and winning the game
With
in
no
front of you
future
by and
planning.
large. No, well, I
What
think
happens when
the
Adil
the
Rashid?
future the future the future generally takes care of itself. Um, and I don't believe in just dropping people randomly just to give somebody else a game. Um, I mean, Rayan Ahmed, I think, is the kind of ready-made replacement for. I think with Rayan Ahmed, it's more interesting in red ball cricket actually where he stands. I think in white ball cricket, you can just see him coming in straight away, and he may play some games over the next week or so. And I just think he'll get through his overspine and obviously offers a great deal with the bat and is a terrific young cricketer. The red ball is a bit more, uncertain where his position would land in terms of his balance between bat and ball, and the competition. There's some other good red ball leg spinners around. South Africa are going to look all right. They've got some good players, Markram, Bavuma, Deval Brevis. Be good to see him there, Stubbs, Rabada, Maharaj. So they're going to be quite a test, aren't they? And they've been playing up in the Northern Territories where they beat Australia 2-1 in an ODI series, took a thumping in the third game, but beat them 2-1. So they're going to be a good challenge. And one or two things we didn't mention, Bobby Simpson laid to rest since last time we spoke. Terrific coach. Coached Lancashire actually for a couple of years, and you could see why he'd been such a good coach of Australia. Complete no-nonsense, old-school coach who just demanded a ferocious work ethic and knew the game inside out. Cheteshwar Pujara's retirement, Nats. We didn't touch on that last week.
Yeah, one of the old school. Another one of the old school batters gone, really. Bat for your life, over my dead body, sort of play the ball late. Very calm, some great innings against Australia in Australia. Um, Loved by Indian fans for playing like that, protected the middle order from, that great middle order with the likes of Kohli in there from the new ball. Phenomenal player, really, and a really nice. We worked with him a little bit this summer. He is exactly, when you work with him, how you think he'd be. It's exactly like he was when he batted. Really, very calm, quietly spoken, talks a lot of sense. I think just a wonderful man and a real old school number three. Had to take over from one of the all-time great number threes in Rahul Dravid, and he sort of took that on. And it's something that's a little bit lacking in international cricket, number threes, actually. I mean, even in the England side, Joe Root doesn't want to do it. And Shubman Gill doesn't want to do it for India. Since he's got the captaincy, he wants to bat four. So in our era, the number three position was your best player, whether it be Viv Richards or Ricky Ponting or Rahul Dravid or whoever. So not an easy, especially batting after you, not an easy position to do. But I think Cheteshwar Pujara did it as well as anyone.
And finally, a bit of news from Oz that Pat Cummins might have back issues. There was just a report that, on a routine scan, maybe something showed up, but it looks like he's going to be wrapped in cotton wool before the Ashes. And that's going to be the great test, I think, of Australia's seam attack because they don't have massive depth, it would appear. Others are injured as well. And outside of the big four, there's not necessarily an amount of depth there. So that's an interesting little story with the Ashes, looming a couple of months away now.
Yeah, it's going to come down to which top three can actually show up, and there's a lot of debate about the top three batting wise, but also the bowling attack, who can stay fit. I mean, they have stayed historic, and we always hear this before Ashes. They do look after, I think before the previous Ashes, Pat Cummins missed quite a bit of cricket for different reasons, but he was there, ready to be drilled,
Whoa.
first ball by Zach Crawley or whatever. But, you often get this. They wrap them in cotton wool, and they have four of them with Scott Boland as well. But England are the same. England will have to rotate their seamers. I saw you on TV the other. You want to go all in. First game, Perth, Optus Stadium. You want to hit them with Wood and Archer and Atkinson, all
Absolutely.
in. You're going to go that first game.
Absolutely. I mean, last time in the Ashes that Stuart Broad has kind of removed from his memory, the Ashes that don't count, he called it, didn't he? England, they got to Brisbane and they left Anderson and Broad waiting to the second test in Adelaide. I'd go all in, hit them with Wood and Archer straight away if they're fit. Anyway, we've got plenty of time to chat about all that. What are you doing on your week off, by the way?
What am I doing? I'm catching up with things. I've been so busy catching up, putting a
Sounds a
car in.
fascinating week.
Not basically, you've asked me a question there, and I've got absolutely no idea what I'm doing all week. So I'll be watching you tomorrow, waffling on the TV from Leeds. Forecast is a bit mixed this week, by the way. Wrap up warm.
It is a bit
You've
mixed.
often underclubbed in that pod. You've often looked cold. I know you're a tough
Well,
northerner, but wrap
being
up
50
warm.
over cricket, we'll be up in the commentary box. So
Oh
if
yeah,
it
good
is
point.
raining and cold,
Good
we'll have
point.
a bit of shelter. Anyway, those games this week are at Leeds, Lords, Thursday, Southampton, Sunday, I think. 350 over games, and then the T20s to follow against South Africa next week. So we'll chat next week, but I'll catch you probably at the Cardiff T20. I'm doing one of those T20s. So I'll see you then.